David Carter, the CEO of a rapidly growing tech company, was pacing nervously inside his office. His eyes flickered back to the clock on the wall, less than an hour before the grand unveiling of their new product, the result of years of tireless work and millions of dollars in investment. The buzz of excitement around the launch was palpable. The team was ready, and everything seemed set for a smooth presentation. But just as the clock ticked closer to the launch time, disaster struck. David's phone rang and the tension in his chest tightened. It was his head engineer, Daniel. "David, we've got a problem." Daniel's voice was laced with stress. "The system crashed. We can't get it back up. We've tried everything." David felt his heart race. The product's success was tied to this software. Without it running, the product couldn't be demonstrated, and if they didn't make the launch, the company could lose millions, possibly even its place in the market. He quickly made his way to the operations floor, his mind already spiraling. The developers were all frantically typing, screens flashing, fingers flying across keyboards, but it was clear. No one was getting anywhere. As he entered the room, David could see the panic in their eyes, the sweat on their brows. It was a problem that no one had anticipated, no one except perhaps the higher powers of fate that seemed to have a cruel sense of humor. "What's the situation?" David asked, his voice calm but carrying an edge of urgency. Daniel turned to him, his face pale. "It's a complete shutdown, David. The software is corrupted. There's no clear solution. If we don't fix this in the next 30 minutes, we can't proceed with the launch. We'll have to delay it." David felt his hands shake. He couldn't allow this to happen, not after everything they had put into the project. He looked around at the tense team. His staff was the best, top-tier engineers, developers, and technicians. But even they were stumped. The magnitude of the issue was too much for them to handle. "How long until you think you'll have it back up?" he pressed, trying to keep his voice steady. "We don't know," Daniel admitted, the grimness in his voice clear. "We're running out of time." The sense of dread crept up David's spine. He felt the weight of his title more heavily than ever before. The success of the company, the livelihoods of the employees, the future of the product, it all rested on his shoulders. And right now, those shoulders felt like they were carrying the weight of the world. The next few minutes felt like hours. As David paced around the room, his mind raced, searching for any solution, anything to get them out of this mess. But every idea he had been brainstorming over the past few minutes only seemed to hit a dead end. The last hope, he realized, was that somehow some miracle could happen in these precious few minutes. But that miracle didn't come from his engineers. It didn't come from the expensive equipment in the office. It came from a source he never could have anticipated, someone who wasn't even supposed to be in the room. As the employees worked frantically, trying to come up with their own solutions, a soft voice caught David's attention. He turned around sharply. "Maya?" he asked as a young girl, no older than 12, stepped into the room. She was the daughter of the company's janitor, Marcus, and David had never seen her in the office before. Maya stood in the doorway, her curious eyes scanning the room. She seemed out of place amid the chaos, yet something about her calm demeanor made her stand out. David's first instinct was to dismiss her. What was a child doing here at a time like this? But before he could open his mouth, Maya stepped forward and approached one of the unoccupied desks. She calmly pulled up a chair and began to sit down. "Excuse me, but—" David started, his words trailing off in confusion. Maya didn't respond. Instead, she sat down and, almost without thinking, began typing on the keyboard in front of her. David watched, perplexed. Was she serious? What was she doing? The engineers, their faces filled with doubt, continued to work around her, unsure whether to stop her or let her try. Maya's fingers moved rapidly across the keys, as if she were in her element. David stood frozen, his mind grappling with disbelief. Who was this kid? What was she doing? Then something miraculous happened. The system, which had been locked in a seemingly unbreakable crash, began to flicker. Slowly the screen came to life. The software was coming back online. David's jaw dropped in astonishment as he watched Maya continue typing with calm confidence, her movements fluid and precise. There was no doubt about it now. She was fixing the problem. He glanced around the room at the stunned engineers. They had tried everything they knew, but it had taken a young girl, someone who had no apparent role in this crisis, to bring the system back from the brink of disaster. The engineers looked at each other in disbelief. And David, well, he was left speechless. The room was silent as Maya's fingers flew over the keys. David, still in disbelief, could only watch in awe as the system gradually came back online. In just a few minutes, Maya had done what the entire team of engineers had failed to accomplish in hours. The problem, which had seemed so insurmountable, was being solved by a child. David, still trying to comprehend what was happening, couldn't help but stare. Maya's calm demeanor only added to the mystique. The engineers, who had been frantically troubleshooting, now stood around her, their faces a mixture of astonishment and embarrassment. How was it possible that someone so young, someone without a degree or formal training, could solve the issue when they couldn't? It wasn't until the software was fully restored and the system was back up and running that Maya stopped typing. She leaned back in her chair, her expression unchanged, as if she had just done something as routine as completing a homework assignment. The room was filled with silence. No one knew how to react. David was the first to speak, his voice thick with a mixture of awe and curiosity. "How did you do that?" Maya looked up at him, her face impassive. "I've been learning coding for a while now. It's not that difficult if you know how to look at it." The simplicity of her answer stunned David even more. She had just fixed what the best minds at his company couldn't, and she made it sound so effortless. There was no hint of arrogance in her voice, just quiet confidence. David took a deep breath, trying to find his words. "But how do you know how to fix this? You're not part of the team." Maya shrugged. "My dad works here. I've spent a lot of time around the tech team, watching them. It's not hard to learn if you're interested." David's mind raced as the enormity of the moment sank in. A young girl, no older than 12, had just saved the company from a crisis that could have cost them millions. She wasn't just a janitor's daughter, she was a genius. For the first time in a long while, David realized that he had completely underestimated the people around him. He had assumed that talent came from certain places, certain backgrounds. But Maya had just proved him wrong. As the engineers quietly filed out of the room, still processing what had happened, David remained standing. He turned to Maya, his voice more sincere than it had ever been before. "Thank you, Maya. You've just saved our company, and I don't think I can ever thank you enough." Maya simply nodded, her expression as calm as ever. She hadn't done it for recognition or fame or even praise. She had done it because she could, because she wanted to. And in that moment, David understood. Genius could come from anywhere. As the days passed, David couldn't stop thinking about Maya. The shock of the crisis had passed, but what remained was an overwhelming sense of awe. A young girl had saved the company, and not only that, she had done so with such calm and precision that it left the entire team, including him, humbled. It wasn't just that she had fixed the problem, it was the ease with which she did it, as though it were second nature to her. David couldn't reconcile what had just happened. Maya wasn't even part of the team. She wasn't a programmer, she wasn't an engineer, and yet she had done something that none of them had been able to do. The thought gnawed at him, forcing him to reevaluate everything he thought he knew about talent, intelligence, and potential. He couldn't shake the image of her sitting at that terminal, her fingers moving effortlessly over the keyboard. It was as if she had unlocked the secrets of the system in a matter of minutes, while the best engineers had been battling it for hours. It was more than just skill, it was instinct, an innate understanding of something most people would never even think to touch. David couldn't help but feel a little guilty. For years he had surrounded himself with the best and brightest, assuming that genius was confined to certain people with the right credentials. He had never stopped to think that there might be untapped talent in people who didn't have fancy degrees or job titles, people like Maya. But now Maya had shown him the error of his thinking. Talent wasn't defined by your job or your background. It was something deeper. And as he walked the hallways of the company, watching his employees go about their business, he couldn't help but wonder how many other hidden geniuses he had overlooked. It was time to change that. Later that afternoon, David made a decision. He would offer Maya an internship, a chance to join the company, to help nurture the talent that had been hiding right under his nose. But more than that, he would give her a voice, an opportunity to shape the future of the company in a way that no one, not even Maya herself, could have predicted. But before any of that, David knew he needed to speak to her. He needed to apologize for the assumptions he'd made and the mistake he'd made in not recognizing her potential sooner. Maya was sitting on the bench outside the company's cafeteria when David approached her. He had planned to wait for a better moment, but the more he thought about it, the more he realized there was no better moment than right now. "Maya," he said gently, trying to make his voice sound as casual as possible, though he couldn't hide the seriousness behind his words. Maya looked up at him, her expression unreadable. She'd noticed him walking toward her, but she didn't seem particularly surprised. Maybe she had known this conversation was coming. "Hi, Mr. Carter," she said, her voice polite but distant. She had always been respectful, but David couldn't shake the feeling that there was a distance between them, a gap he had created by underestimating her in the first place. David sat down next to her, unsure of how to begin. "I owe you an apology, Maya," he began, his voice sincere. "I didn't recognize what you did the other day for what it truly was. You're a genius, Maya, and I've completely underestimated you." Maya didn't say anything at first. She simply sat there, staring ahead, as though waiting for him to continue. "I've been running this company for years, and I've always prided myself on hiring the best people," David continued. "But the truth is, I've overlooked a lot of potential. I've been so focused on what I thought mattered, degrees, experience, resumes, that I missed what really matters, the ability to think outside the box, to problem solve, to innovate. And you, Maya, have done that better than anyone else here." Maya turned her head slightly, meeting his eyes for the first time. Her expression softened, but she still didn't speak. "I'd like to offer you something," David said, feeling the weight of the moment. "An internship, if you're interested. You've already demonstrated the kind of talent we need, and I think you could bring something really special to this company. We'd be honored to have you on board." Maya blinked, surprised by the offer. She had never thought about working for a company like this, certainly not with people like him, but something in her told her that this wasn't just about fixing the system anymore. It was about something much bigger, a chance to prove to herself and to the world that her potential was limitless, no matter her background. David could see the hesitation in her eyes. "You don't have to make a decision now," he said quickly. "I just wanted to offer you the opportunity. You're something special, Maya, and I don't want to miss the chance to give you the platform to shine." Maya looked down at the ground for a moment, processing what he had said. She hadn't expected any of this, certainly not an offer like that. But as she thought about it, she realized that this could be a turning point for her. It wasn't just about fixing broken systems. It was about breaking barriers, about creating something new, something that hadn't been possible before. Finally, she looked up at him, a small but confident smile forming on her face. "I'll take the offer," she said simply. David couldn't help but smile back. In that moment, he realized that Maya wasn't just fixing problems. She was going to change everything, and he couldn't wait to see where that journey would take her and where it would take the company. The news of Maya's internship offer spread quickly through the office. Most of the employees were stunned by the CEO's decision, unsure of how to react. Some were still processing the fact that a young girl, one who wasn't even part of the team, had been the one to solve a critical issue that had stumped everyone. But for Maya, the opportunity wasn't just about the technical skills. It was about proving herself in a world that had often underestimated her. The following week, Maya found herself sitting in the same room that had once felt foreign to her, the heart of the company's tech division. The engineers, developers, and analysts who had once ignored her presence now treated her with a kind of quiet respect, their curiosity palpable. David had made it clear that this wasn't just a symbolic gesture. He wanted Maya to be involved, to contribute to solving real problems. But Maya knew this was about more than just proving herself to them. It was about proving something to herself. She wasn't just a janitor's daughter anymore. She was a member of a team that had once seemed so far out of reach. "All right, Maya, we've got a few things for you to look at," Daniel, the head of the engineering team, said one morning, his voice a little softer than usual. "We've been running into a recurring bug with our interface design. If you could take a look at it and see if you can identify the root of the issue, that'd be great." Maya nodded, feeling the familiar sense of calm settle over her as she began to read through the lines of code. The technical jargon was familiar to her, but the complexity was still impressive. She could feel her pulse quicken, but not out of fear. It was the rush of doing something she loved, something that gave her a sense of purpose. As she worked, Maya could feel the eyes of the team on her. They were waiting, observing her every move. She could sense their skepticism, their doubts. But it didn't matter. This was her chance, and she wasn't going to let anyone or anything get in her way. It took several hours, but Maya finally pinpointed the issue. A simple bug in the data sync process, something that the team had missed in their previous attempts. She presented her solution confidently, explaining the process in terms that everyone could understand. David was watching from the back of the room, his expression unreadable. But as Maya explained her solution, he saw something in her that he hadn't anticipated, a quiet strength, a clarity of thought that transcended the typical office politics and egos. She didn't seek recognition, she just sought solutions. "Impressive work, Maya," Daniel said, nodding appreciatively. "We could have spent another day on that bug if you hadn't come through. Nice job." The team, who had been so quiet and unsure just days before, now seemed to understand that Maya wasn't just another intern. She was an integral part of the team, an asset that could change the course of their work. David felt a wave of pride wash over him. Maya had just proven that she wasn't there to occupy space. She was there to make a difference. Over the next few months, Maya continued to exceed expectations. She didn't just fix bugs and help with coding tasks. She became a part of the company's creative process, brainstorming ideas and solutions with the team. Her ability to approach problems from a fresh perspective made her an invaluable asset. The engineers no longer saw her as the janitor's daughter. They saw her as a brilliant programmer, a visionary with untapped potential. David watched all of this with awe. He had never anticipated that someone like Maya would have such a profound impact on the company. His decision to offer her an internship had turned out to be one of the best he'd ever made. Maya wasn't just a young girl with technical skills. She was a symbol of what could happen when you looked beyond titles, degrees, and resumes. She had proven that genius didn't have to come from a traditional background. It could come from anywhere. One afternoon, David called Maya into his office. She walked in, looking as calm and collected as ever, but there was a glint of curiosity in her eyes. "Maya, I wanted to talk to you about something," David began, his voice steady. "You've done incredible work here. I've watched you grow and contribute in ways I never expected, so I'd like to offer you something." Maya raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "I'd like to offer you a full-time position, an official role here, leading a new team we're starting on a big project. We want you to lead it. You've earned it." Maya's eyes widened. She had never imagined that this moment would come so soon. But there it was, the recognition, the validation, and the opportunity to lead. She had come so far from a young girl with a passion for coding to a respected leader in one of the most innovative tech companies in the world. "I'm honored," Maya said, her voice soft but filled with pride. "Thank you." David smiled, a genuine warmth in his eyes. "You've earned it, Maya. Now go ahead and show the world what you can do." As Maya walked out of David's office, a sense of pride filled her chest. She had proved herself, not just to him, but to everyone in that company, and most importantly, to herself. She had started as the janitor's daughter, but now she was a leader. She had broken down every barrier that stood in her way. And in doing so, Maya had not only changed her life, she had changed the entire company's future.